Dian Fossey, born on January 16, 1932, died on December 26, 1985, was an American primatologist and conservationist known for undertaking an extensive study of mountain gorilla groups from 1966 until her murder in 1985. She studied them daily in the mountain forests of Rwanda, initially encouraged to work there by paleoanthropologist Louis Leakey. Gorillas in the Mist, a book published 2 years before her death, is Fossey's account of her scientific study of the gorillas at HerStory Research Center and prior career. It was adapted into a 1988 film of the same name. Fossey was a leading primatologist, and a member of the Primates, a group of female scientists recruited by Leakey to study great apes in their natural environments. Along with Jane Goodall, who studies chimpanzees, and Barut Galdikas, who studies orangutans. Fossey spent 20 years in Rwanda, where she supported conservation efforts, strongly opposed poaching and tourism in wildlife habitats, and made more people acknowledge the sapience of gorillas. Following the killing of a gorilla and subsequent tensions, she was murdered in her cabin at a remote camp in Rwanda in December 1985. Although Fossey's American research assistant was convicted in absentia, there is no consensus as to who killed her. Her research and conservation work helped reduce the downward population trend in mountain gorillas. On September 24, 1967, Fossey founded the HerStory Research Center, a remote rainforest camp nestled in Ruhengeri province in the saddle of two volcanoes. For the research center's name, Fossey used Kari for the first 4 letters of Mount Karisimbi that overlooked her camp from the south, and Sok for the last 4 letters of Mount Bisok, the slopes of which rose to the north, directly behind camp. Established 3,000 meters, 9,800 feet, up Mount Bisok, the defined study area covered 25 square kilometers, 9.7 square miles. She became known by locals as Nirmishabeli, or Nyaramasibiri, roughly translated as the woman who lives alone on the mountain. Unlike the gorillas from the Congo side of the Virungas, the HerStory area gorillas had never been partially habituated by Schaller's study. They knew humans only as poachers, and it took longer for Fossey to be able to study the HerStory gorillas at a close distance. Fossey attempted to habituate the gorillas by copying their actions. Over time, the gorillas became accustomed to Fossey. As she explained to the BBC in 1984, "I'm an inhibited persona and I felt that the gorillas were somewhat inhibited as well. So I imitated their natural, normal behavior like feeding, munching on celery stalks or scratching myself." Fossey made discoveries about gorillas including how females transfer from group to group over the decades, gorilla vocalization, hierarchies, and social relationships among groups, rare infanticide, gorilla diet, and how gorillas recycle nutrients. Fossey's research was funded by the Wilkie Foundation and the Leakey Home, with primary funding from the National Geographic Society. In 1970, she appeared on the cover of National Geographic magazine, which brought tremendous attention to her work. Fossey was often hostile to Africans who entered into the protected area, even shooting roaming cattle. By 1980, Fossey, who had obtained her PhD at Cambridge University in the UK, was recognized as the world's leading authority on the physiology and behavior of mountain gorillas, defining gorillas as being dignified, highly social, gentle giants, with individual personalities, and strong family relationships. Fossey lectured as professor at Cornell University in 1981-83. Her best-selling book Gorillas in the Mist was praised by Nicolaas Tinbergen, the Dutch ethologist and ornithologist who won the 1973 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Her book remains the best-selling book about gorillas. Many research students left after not being able to cope with the cold, dark, and extremely muddy conditions around HerStory on the slopes of the Virunga volcanoes, where paths usually had to be cut through 6-foot-tall grass with a machete. Opposition to poaching. While hunting had been illegal in the national park of the Virunga volcanoes in Rwanda since the 1920s, the law was rarely enforced by park conservators, who were often bribed by poachers and paid a salary less than Fossey's own African staff. On 3 occasions, Fossey wrote that she witnessed the aftermath of the capture of infant gorillas at the behest of the park conservators for zoos. Since gorillas will fight to the death to protect their young, the kidnappings would often result in up to 10 adult gorillas' deaths. Through the Digit Fund, Fossey financed patrols to destroy poachers' traps in the Carisoke study area. In 4 months in 1979, the Fossey Patrol, consisting of 4 African staffers, destroyed 987 poachers' traps in the research area's vicinity. The official Rwandan National Park Guards, consisting of 24 staffers, did not eradicate any poachers' traps during the same period. In the eastern portion of the park not patrolled by Fossey, poachers virtually eradicated all the park's elephants for ivory and killed more than a dozen gorillas. Fossey helped in the arrest of several poachers, some of whom served prison sentences. Murder. In the early morning of December 27, 1985, Fossey was discovered murdered in the bedroom of her cabin located at the far edge of the camp in the Virunga Mountains, Rwanda. Her body was found face up near the 2 beds where she slept, roughly 7 feet, 2 meters, away from a hole that her assailants had apparently cut in the wall of the cabin. Wayne Richard McGuire, Fossey's last research assistant at Carisoke, was summoned to the scene by Fossey's house servant and found her bludgeoned to death, reporting that when I reached down to check her vital signs, I saw her face had been split, diagonally, with 1 machete blow. The cabin was littered with broken glass and overturned furniture, with a 9mm handgun and ammunition beside her on the floor. Her cabin had been ransacked. However, robbery was not believed to be the motive for the crime, as Fossey's valuables were still in the cabin, including her passport, handguns, and thousands of dollars in U.S. bills and traveler's checks. After her death, Fossey's Digit Fund in the U.S. was renamed the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund International. The Carisoke Research Center is operated by the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund International, and continues the daily gorilla monitoring and protection that she started. Fossey is generally credited with reversing the downward trend in the mountain gorilla population. Due to poaching, gorilla populations declined from 450 in 1960 to just 250 in 1981. However, Fossey's war on poaching saw the final confirmed killing of a gorilla in 1983. By the late 1980s, the population had risen to 280. It continues to rise, as of 1987. Fossey's research, and the following publicity, spawned gorilla tourism. Between Fossey's death and the 1994 Rwandan genocide, Carisoke was directed by former students, some of whom had opposed her. During the genocide and subsequent period of insecurity, the camp was completely looted and destroyed. Today only remnants are left of her cabin. During the Civil War, the Virunga National Park was filled with refugees, and illegal logging destroyed vast areas. In 2014, the 82nd anniversary of Fossey's birth was commemorated by a Google Doodle. Thanks for watching HerStory channel. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe our channel.